everybody, welcome to another edition of Calling All
Minions.
We upgraded.
Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier, and this is Calling All Minions. Now, of course, this is the same old show, just a slight change in format, experimenting with some different things. But we're going to try to do it in a little bit more organized way. So for those of you who may have never seen this before, this is basically where people go in the forums and they ask a dev and I answer. So with that, let's get started. And the first question comes from Marcel Santing. Starting up the capital/large ship. Good day. I am curious about the future of capital ships. At this moment, if you get into a ship, you press flight ready R and you take off. For the smaller ships, I can understand. However, larger ships, it should be kind of unbelievable. Let's say you're in a Polaris and you're taking it out for the first run. How would that work? As an example, the crew would load up food, weapons, personal items into the ship, and after settling down, they will man their stations and the ship will leave the station. However, will there be a mandatory checkup like an engine room, activating the engines or something like that? How is your vision about that process? So the truth is, there are some people out there who want to do a full flight checklist before you get off the ground every single time, and certainly iterations of our cockpit have kind of brought some of that. Like, you can just go hit flight ready, or you can hit power on, you can engines on, and there were different times where devs were coming out and saying, oh, we want you to do this and set that. But the problem is that it's not really something that works for the game. It kind of takes a little too long, and there is an emphasis on a certain amount of realism and immersion in Star Citizen, but that also has to be balanced with the fact that this is a game and it's supposed to be enjoyable to play. And though there may be a portion of the community that would enjoy going through that checklist every time, there's probably a much larger portion of the community that would prefer to kind of be able to get in and just kind of hot start the ship and go. Now, I do agree that the basic getting into the cockpit and hitting flight ready doesn't really make a lot of sense. I mean, I kind of think back to back to the very first Star Wars movie when Han tells Chewie, go get the Millennium Falcon warmed up. I'm just going out, and then he gets intercepted by Greedo, and then he shoots first. So something like that, getting a ship ready, there should be a little bit more of a process to it. The problem is that you have to kind of balance that off with having to get off the ground quickly, and you may need to race out there to get something. And if you have to go through a whole checklist in a larger ship, certainly that could be seen as a way to balance things, but it may not always be the best way to go about it. So chances are, over the next little while, you're going to find CIG experimenting with different ideas here and there to try and find a balance, especially as more of the larger ships come into the game and more of the actual systems involved in these ships are brought online as well. You have to remember that the current iteration of the ship systems are in a very simplistic state. A lot of the components really kind of don't exist. A lot of the supposed realism and immersion just isn't there yet because the systems that they're attached to aren't there yet. So we're not really in a state where we can say this is it and this is the way it's going to be at the end of the day. We don't really know how that's going to end up. So we have to kind of play it by ear for a while as players and kind of watch how CIG kind of looks at things. And we have to I think we do have to kind of make a slight allowance towards the idea of I just want to get up and go and have that there, while at the same time allowing a player who wants the more immersive activities, like maybe they want to go to engineering and they want to slowly bring the power core up to 100% and then warm up all the jet engine or the motors or what ion engines or whatever they're called in this game, get them all warmed up and get everything all prepped. Maybe there's someone who wants to go through that process, and allowance should be made to allow that person to do that. So balancing is probably going to is something that we're going to see. in iterations as different systems come online and how they interface with the ship and the ship systems and how the player interfaces with them. We'll probably go through a few iterations. So I would definitely say that this is not the final state of the ship startup procedure, but it is a state reflecting the current state of the gameplay and its complexity. All right, next up, Sir Toggy asks, we can already buy the Arrow, so why make it a flash sale ship? It's the same price with the same hangar and insurance, so are you guys removing it from the store as an always available ship after May 13th or something? No, I realize that this show gets watched in many different parts of the world. Sometimes I look at that map and I'm like, Afghanistan? Really? Okay. But I'm not sure if this expression exists wherever you are, but sometimes the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing, and this is one of those instances. This is kind of, it's kind of reflective of one of the bigger weaknesses that CIG has, which is, sometimes one group is doing something and the other group really isn't aware of what that thing is and how that can impact the game. And so you get these kind of problems and messes showing up with different systems coming into the game, and the complementary part of that being, let's say, a mining ship or something like that maybe not existing, or a salvage ship or something like that, or a salvage ship coming into the game and salvage not existing. Not that that's ever happened, but this is kind of just one of those instances. Thank God everyone's being so micromanaged. All right, a rather ambitious question from Don Phantom. A law system V1 3.6 and security system 3.8. Hello, I have a couple of simple questions. With law system V1 and 3.6, a hierarchical jurisdictional system that allows areas to be associated with a set of laws, each of which may specify a variety of penalties. Detection and dispatch mechanics will, in turn, accordingly enable local security and bounty hunters to make a living make a life of crime dicey. Sorry, I'm totally messing up there. If potentially lucrative proposition. Does this mean that the Armistice Zone will be substituted for an implemented security law enforcement mechanic within places like Area 18, Lorville, and Levski, for example, all varying degrees based on their lore? The biggest one being the ability for bounty hunters to track and apprehend bounties inside of Armistice Zones. Yes. There was an interview recently where they were talking about taking the possibility of taking away Armistice Zones entirely and letting the law system kind of deal with malfeasant individuals and having to check in your weapons while you go into, say, Area 18 or Lorville or whatever, and then you go and you check your weapons back out. I think that that's a superior system. A system that penalizes, negative behavior according to local laws of that area. I mean, you can think about it as just, toggles. Is parking illegally an offense in Lorville? Yes, toggle on. Is parking illegally in Levski an offense? No, but you get a warning. Something like that. It's just something that they toggle on and off depending on the area, and yes, depending upon the lore. So that is how that is going to work in what they plan to do. Second, security system in 3.8. The security system controls who has access to areas, objects based on various factors such as reputation, ownership, keycards, and faction. It will automatically issue warnings to people breaking the law, and if ignored, will flag them as criminals to security forces. Does this mean that checkpoints will actually function as checkpoints? Yes. Where players who has armor and guns would be required to store or turn in their gear either in their ship upon arrival or at one of the checkpoints, yes, as already described. And I mean, to elaborate on that, I mean, because you're kind of just kicking around the same thing. We were talking about bounty hunters going into these areas and potentially hunting players. There may be certain allowances that I think would make the game more interesting in terms of allowing someone who has the appropriate rep with local security forces to carry a weapon in those areas to potentially apprehend criminals. I think that should be a thing, right? Like if Hurston Security and you are, tight and they love you and you're one of their top out there problem solver enforcer type dudes, then yeah, you should probably still be able to carry your weapon into Lorville. But if you misuse that weapon, the penalties should be ultra severe. Also, there should be an allowance for maybe black market weapons that can't be scanned or things like that, like a shiv or something like that you can sneak in to protect yourself in those types of situations if you're a naughty boy. Anyways, yeah, that's about it. All right, next up, Zero asks, update ships on Ship Matrix and Pledge Store. Please update all of your ships on the homepage regarding pictures, brochures, HoloViewer, ... If newcomers want to view or buy a Mustang Alpha or a Cutlass Black, they won't get what they have seen. Yeah. And this is much more important than any stats should be and should be fixed ASAP. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a job for Turbulent to a certain degree, though the art side would be a CIG thing. They could easily pull from the multitude of screenshots of any ship on Reddit and use that to populate that material. But unfortunately, it's just not a priority and nobody's paying attention right now. And finally, Andar Gillian asks, electric scooters. Now that you have decided to make motorcycles, can you make small electric scooters that can be stored in the back of the armor like a weapon? It could be very convenient to move quickly in capital vessels like the Idris or Javelin. For example, in the hospital where I go for treatment of my cancer, there are plenty of doctors and nurses who use them to move quickly in the building, so it's got to be a pretty big campus that you're going to. It is very convenient and fun to watch. Thank you. I would say electric scooters, no. Hoverboards, yes. Hoverboards from Back to the Future too, my dude. With the one, the one that Chet's grandson or whatever, was it Chet? Whatever. His grandson had like the little rocket jets on it, and maybe the regular one that Michael J. Fox had. That would all be pretty awesome. The downside would be, of course, that how this would be misused in game. People, jetting around and doing all sorts of things. And when you think about all the spaces in Star Citizen, you may notice that there are very few areas in Star Citizen that are actually wheelchair accessible. Consider that for a second. Everywhere you go, stairs, 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 up the stairs, around the stairs, down the stairs. There's no ramps for scooters. So it would involve a complete refactor of so many environments to include wheelchair accessibility, which in and of itself raises some interesting points, but I think we'll stay away from that in this discussion. And I'll simply say hoverboards would kind of cover that issue, and I wouldn't be opposed to it. I mean, really, it would be something cool to have in game, especially if you could have your own powered hoverboard, something that a regular player could carry around. Let's say you have to land your fighter a ways away from an objective and move in, and you don't have the room to carry a motorcycle or anything like that. A hoverboard just makes a lot more sense, So that would be my counter suggestion to your suggestion, because to do scooters, we would have to get rid of all the stairs, and God knows the backlog is pretty much the entire game right now. So we don't need a lot more added to that. Anyways, that's the show for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.